The Feathered Prophet of Pudding Lane. History remembers the baker of Pudding Lane, but it forgot the only witness who tried to stop the inferno. High in the soot-stained rafters of 1666 London, a feathered prophet sensed the coming catastrophe long before the first spark. This is the full story of the pigeon that nearly saved the city. 1. A city on the edge. London, 1665. The city lay swollen with the last breath of the Great Plague. Its alleys were clogged with mourners in black hoods, its markets haunted by quiet stalls, its river a mirror for the fog that never quite lifted. Yet beneath the gloom there pulsed a stubborn vigor, women haggling over beef, children chasing each other between the houses, the clatter of carriage wheels over cobblestones. The streets were a lattice of sounds, a chorus of life that refused to be silenced. Above the low roofs, a world of its own kept watch. A chaotic aviary of swallows, sparrows, and, most prominently, one great grey pigeon called Marlowe. He was not a king among pigeons, he was no larger than a thrush, his plumage dulled by a lifetime of soot and ash. Yet his eyes, dark and keen, held a flicker that set him apart. In the cramped loft of a timber-frame bakery on Pudding Lane, Marlowe had taken residence the year before, nesting in a hollow between the joists that held up the baker's oven. The baker, Thomas Fariner, was a man of iron hands and no patience for the idle chatter of birds. He bustled from dough to fire, his mind forever on the rising of loaves. He cared little for the pigeon's coo, the soft rustle of wings, the occasional feather that drifted down onto the flour-dusted floor. Yet Marlowe's presence was inevitable. The bakery's chimney, a gaping throat to the sky, called him each dusk and dawn. It was in this ordinary rhythm that the first tremor of the future began to pulse through Marlowe's senses. 2. The omen in the sky. The night before the fire, the wind turned sour. It carried a thin, metallic tang that prickled the pigeon's nostrils. Marlowe rose from his nest and perched on a beam, eyes wide, watching the sky. A faint orange glow tipped one of the distant rooftops, like a candle guttering in the gloom. The glow was not a sunrise, it was a flicker from a far-off hearth that refused to be smothered by the early mist. He listened. The city's din dimmed for a breath as the wind hushed. Then, a low murmur, not of men, but of the very timbers themselves, creaking as if they sensed a tremor beneath. Marlowe's heart, if a bird could have one, quickened. He had felt heat before, the subtle rise of temperature around the bakery when stones were put into the oven. He had learned to gauge the subtle shift in the humidity, the way the soot settled on his wings, the way the distant river's mist grew thicker the night a storm was near. Now a strange pressure pressed against his feathers, a menace that rose from the very foundations of the city. He turned his head, thrust his chest out, and gave a series of sharp coos, slow, urgent, almost a warning. The other pigeons fluttered, confused, as a flock of rats scurried past the open window, their eyes glistening in the dim light. The baker, Thomas, was on the floor, kneading dough, his back bent, his mind far from the ceiling. He ignored the birds' cries, the rustle that sounded like a warning in a language he had never learned. The pigeon, however, would not be dismissed so easily. He launched himself from the beam, flapping his solid, smudged wings, and swooped toward the open window that faced the street. The wind hit his feathers with a sudden chill, and for a fleeting moment, the city's silhouette seemed to blur, a dark mass of thatch, timber, and life, poised on a knife's edge. Marlowe reached down, his beak clacking against the wooden sill, and pecked at the loose shingle that hung at the edge. He nudged it, trying to create a sound, any sound that might cut th.